I grew up on an old farm built in the late 40s. The farm wasn't extremely old, since it got torn down and turned into a suburban neighborhood in 2015. However, my experiences there varied from getting chased by cows to being chased by Addie. There was a small, old abandoned homestead about 100 yards from my house, and that's where Addie lived. She died in that house before the farm was built, and there wasn't much known about her. A few times a week my friends, who lived on a farm neighboring to me, my brother and I would go to Addie's house and explore. There was one particular experience that made my bones shiver when I remember it. It was in the evening and the sun was about set while we were in Addie's house. There were birds and crickets chirping outside, and we could hear the creaks as the cold breeze brushed against the house. Suddenly it went quiet. We couldn't hear the animals chirping anymore, and it was as if the wind got louder and harder, so we decided to head back home. As we headed out the front door, we heard footsteps on the second floor. My friend, being smart, decided to sprint towards our house, but the rest of us stayed put for a second in shock. And like a shot we heard those footsteps stomping swiftly down the stairs, and we booked it. We ran inside my house and locked the door behind us. The stairs inside that old abandoned house were open and had no backs, so you can see people coming up and down the stairs from the front door. I never spoke about it because I didn't want to scare anyone. But as we heard those footsteps coming down the stairs, I could see the silhouette of bare feet and ankles running down through the cracks of the steps. It was my 6th grade year. I was hanging out with the daughter of my parents' friends. At the time, I had a crush on her, but that's a different thing. At the time, she had a friend of hers, her sister, my sister, and possibly my friend's half-sister along with us. We both had a fairly large family. Anyways, if my memory is correct, we just had lunch and was now playing hide and seek. Their house had a large backyard with a thick forest. I chose to go as deep as I could into the forest, knowing they wouldn't even bother to look there. There was one thing that struck me as odd. You see, her parents did set up a wooden bridge since there was a big enough creek connected to their land. Not too big, not too small. But when I walked through, I found a second bridge. Now, at the time, it never struck me as odd. I just went over it and kept walking. I found a slab of oak wood just thrown in the forest. I can't remember whether or not it was a construction slab or just a piece of something else. I chose to sit on it so I wouldn't touch the dirt and grass and not get my pants dirty. As I sat, there would be a small opening that showed me a nice, beautiful field. A field you could frolic in for days. As I took in the sight, I then heard screaming. Not just any normal screaming, it was a child screaming bloody murder. By the way the screams sounded, whoever it was couldn't have been any older than 5. I stood there for a second before getting onto my feet and attempting to get to the sound, but the forest was just too thick. I ended up just booking it back to the house. They've already given up on looking for me, and when I explained what happened to my friend, they claimed that there was a shooting range nearby and somebody could have gotten hurt. At first, I believed it. But then it struck me. Why didn't I hear a gunshot? The screams just appeared out of thin air, and from how close they were, I definitely would have heard a gunshot. I would have told the parents, but they weren't there at the time. Later, when I did inform both her and my parents about it that night at the bonfire, they looked at me weirdly. They were confused by loads of things, but one part really stuck out to me. That second bridge I found was never put there by them. That wouldn't be the first time I noticed strange activity at that cursed house. Once I heard what sounded like a tornado siren, but it sounded distorted and prolonged longer than usual. or when both me and my stepsister found a growing tree just wiggling left and right. It was at the point where wind couldn't blow it, nor was there a draft that night. Nonetheless, I'm not sure whether this was paranormal, someone actually being in danger, or hell, someone trying to lead me into a trap. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the only person who was close to this, and nobody ever takes me seriously. I have many stories, both with ghosts and just scary, weird, dangerous, but the thing that has always given me the most chills is when I was about 13. We had just been to the funeral of a beloved relative, and at every funeral you get a little card with the pictures and all of the songs and texts that were on the funeral. I was in the kitchen with my back turned towards the most hated door in our apartment. It was that hated because it was almost impossible to open. It was old and heavy, and for some reason, I needed to weigh down with my body weight when trying to open it. I was standing there looking at that funeral card when I get a feeling to just look back, and as I do, I hear the handle starting to get pushed down. I watch the handle get pushed down and the door slowly creaks open. I just had this feeling that it was him. He heard me when I was thinking of him, and he decided to play a trick on me like he used to. I looked around the apartment. I was home alone.